They were always exploring different genres on one album. There'd be something very country, something strictly blues, something kind of rock, bands back then kind of wanted to show you what their range of abilities were, It wasn't not till like the 80s, 90s when bands started doing one thing.
Right.
On a
and
record.
Why did that happen, you think?
I think that, again, was what we were talking about earlier with record companies kind of encouraged that, this is what people want to hear from you. Don't do
anything else.
From that. Yeah, And there's always that time in the history of recording where, it kind of falls back into that where, nobody wants to cross the street to hear you expand on your repertoire, Just do what sells records.
Do you think, Michael, that lasts for X amount of records with a band over a period of time?
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of things that become a part of that scenario. I think any band over the years has to go through divorce, and bands have to evolve to grow. I don't, maybe not. Stones kind of contradict that rule of thumb, and the Beatles, but a lot of bands, that seemed to be a necessary growing pain. Was guys come and go, and bands reform and and take different paths musically, but making room for growth was always the battle you fought with the industry and trying to stay with your audience.
It just occurred to me that Ted Templeman produced Minute by Minute, and then the Van Halen first record at the same year.
Mm-hmm. He played us the demo he got of them. He goes, "You got to hear these guys," and it was like Pretty Woman, and it was and Eddie, of course, was amazing. Listening to his guitar playing, I was like, wow, And Ted was already, signing him to the label and was going to do the record with him, and, But it was like they came out of nowhere. They were kids like, hanging out at a music store in Pasadena and playing gigs, of course, and doing what they did. But they were very young guys, And, they had this whole new take on rock and roll that Ted, was really excited about,
It's fascinating that even producers like Ted Templeman were really eclectic.
Mm-hmm. I think the business at the time, and I think it is today too, I hesitate to, like a lot of people go, oh, everything sounds the same. I don't think so. And there's nothing good out there. I don't think so. I think there's some remarkably great and inventive and new music. And when I say new, I mean, stuff that's harmonically unlike anything that's come before it. We were talking about that group, Lemon Twigs,
Yep.
And, I mean, it's just, to me, to hear something that Thundercat, there's things in there I recognize, and they but it's so harmonically inventive and melodically intriguing and inventive, but undeniably beautiful. It's not like you have to listen to it and go, whoa, that's weird. How do I wrap my head around that? It's like it speaks to you musically right off the bat. And then you spend the rest of the time going, what is that? It's almost like they're more in keeping with some of the early jazz acts, like when jazz got very progressive, how they, twisted melody and they reinvented the approach to melody and chords, and it was beautiful. What was happening was valid. And a lot of these bands, like those bands I mentioned, it's not that what they're doing is unfamiliar. It's just the way they're doing it is so unique and so interesting and contemporary in its own sense.
I'd like to take a second to talk to you about this channel. This is actually Rick Beato 2. I've had it since the beginning of my main channel, and many of you are not subscribed. As a matter of fact, 87% of the people that watch this channel regularly are not subscribed. So I encourage you to hit the subscribe button on this channel and on my main channel. This will help me get even more of my dream guests and help continue to grow both channels. Thank you.
One of the people I interviewed, Christopher Cross, you sang on his record on Ride Like the Wind. He told the story, you were in the same studio when they were working on that. And I mean, do you remember any of this?
Yeah, I remember it quite vividly, yeah. Michael was, in fact, I didn't even know Michael was producing records yet. I knew Mike as a keyboard player.
Yeah.
We had played on some sessions together, and he was always really very encouraging because I always, and rightfully so, felt like, I don't know what I'm doing here, just forgive me if I play anything stupid,
That sounds like something he would say.
Yeah, no, and he was always very, encouraging, I'd look over him like, and but here he is producing records, and he was, I think, already signed on as a staff producer with Warner's, and he brought Christopher to Warner Brothers, and he said, "Hey, man, can you come over when you get done? Can you just drop by Studio B? I'm recording this new kid, and it's there's some stuff. Just a couple lines that take us an hour, And literally, that's about all it took, or less, But I went down and I heard this stuff, and I liked it. Really, it was catchy. It was really, it caught my ear for sure. I met Christopher, and he was just, this humble kid from Texas, was in the big city and came out to California to make a record, And the stuff, all the tracks were really great, They played Sailing for me, and I was like, wow, it's really, really great stuff. And so Michael asked me to sing these backgrounds and on Ride Like the Wind, and that was the only thing we did that day. And it was, it was over pretty quickly, and until I, heard the record on the radio. I was kind of amazed.
You probably spent, what, 30 minutes doing all that?
Maybe.
If that?
Yeah.
Did Michael say, okay, this is what I want you to sing. Oh, okay, I'm just going to sing the answer part. I think Christopher told me that he had already sung it, and you just replaced his part.
I think so, yeah. And the song was indeed very catchy, and I kind of already knew that it would probably be a hit, but of course I had no idea what the future of the record really was, because I didn't even know Michael was producing records yet, It was all a surprise to me,
You've seen the skit of who is it, Rick Moranis, I think?
Rick Moranis, yeah.
It's hilarious, isn't it?
Well, first of all, the first time I saw that on television, I had just left Pat Simmons' room. We were on the road back then, and we went back to the studio, and he goes, "Man, I got this pot you're not going to believe." He goes, we only take a couple hits, and it's like this stuff lamb-based you, And so we're in his room and smoking a blunt. I took a couple hits, and I literally had to go. I had to go back to my room and lay down. I remember I said to him, "Yeah, I got to go." I said, "This is," and I made it to my room. I somehow got the key in the door, and I walked in, and I always left my TV on when I leave the room for the gig. So this thing is in progress on television. This guy that looks really familiar, and in this skit that's playing out, and I remember thinking, that guy really looks familiar, and it was Rick Moranis dressed as me, doing this, going into the studios, and they're playing Christopher's song, and I'm like, and I thought, I'm losing it, that's what's happening. I'm having hallucinations, that stuff was stronger than I think, And then as it played out, I realized this is SETV, and it's a skit, and thank God for that, It was hilarious. I think they had some carpet commercial that the Doobie Brothers were the soundtrack to. And so I think Rick Moranis actually apologized to me years later when we were out with the Rock and Soul Review. He came to one of the gigs at Jones Beach, and he goes, "I just want to apologize for that." I said, "No, man." I said, "I've gotten more mileage out of that."
Oh, my God. Yeah. That's one of the best skits ever.
It was so hilarious.